training. And the point I was trying to make was that one of the things that worst practice of testing is to just assign people who are interested in performance testing to do performance testing and then see what happens, because what happens is false positives, in other words, bug reports that don't correspond to actual bugs, and false negatives, which is missing stuff that does correspond to actual bugs. Evelyn comes back. Any suggested ways to test for the load, test the load for a cloud server? Well, this brings us back into this, how do we test production? You know, I mean, this is one of the great mysteries of cloud computing, and obviously, you know, there are some very, very smart people who haven't figured this out yet. Amazon, you know, very, very smart people, and have been able to produce very reliable service in terms of Amazon itself, have been more stymied with their online cloud resource offering. Because, you know, when you start talking about offering resources in the cloud, you know, what people are going to do with those resources is very unpredictable. So, you know, it's tough enough to say, okay, I've got an application like Amazon or you know, something along those lines, another e-commerce application, and there's some pretty straightforward things that can be done with that, and fairly tightly prescribed, and your set of mixes of transactions and loads and so forth that can occur is fairly well constrained. You get out into cloud stuff and saying, okay, well, you know, there's this resource and it's available, you know, to any number of things with, like Amazon did. Then, you know, there are problems, and we've seen this with Google too. I mean, again, a collection of very smart people, but still having a fair amount of reliability problems with some of their cloud offerings. So this is hard. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do a full replica of the production environment if the production environment is 10,000 servers distributed around the world, but you are going to need to do some long, hard thinking about how to simulate that and how to model that, because it's, you know, otherwise you're going to run into surprises just like Google and Amazon have. I got a question from Gayatri. Good session, so thank you. Will you be sharing the presentation with the audience? I'm assuming that you perhaps joined a little late, so I'll mention this again for those people who might have joined late. The presentation, the slides for the presentation, PDF format, are on the RBCS website. You see the address right here. So if you go out to rbcs-us.com and go to the basic library page, then you will find these slides and the slides for previous presentations as well. Let's see, Marie says thanks for the answer to resolving what OJT is. You're quite welcome. Sorry about the acronym there. I try to avoid using acronyms, but the vagaries of PowerPoint sometimes make it necessary. A comment from Lee here. Hi, Rex. Thanks for another interesting webinar. You're quite welcome. It's always a pleasure. Lee continues, this is not really a question, more of an observation. I recently attended your presentation in Melbourne on risk-based testing and have started to implement risk-based testing on a new project here recently. We are just going through the quality risk analysis, and this webinar has given me food for thought for the performance, load, and reliability sections of that analysis. Thanks, Lee. Great. Yes, that should give you food for thought. Actually, on two parts. One is in terms of identifying quality risk items. Certainly, hopefully get you thinking about that. But another thing I hope that this gets you thinking about is actually project risks related to performance, load, and reliability testing, because most of these things that I've been talking about, well, I mean, some of them are quality risks, like stuff that happens when you scale things up, but a lot of these things are just project risks, like unrealistic test environments, use of self-generated load rather than more realistic load generation, and so forth. So make sure that you think about the project risks that can afflict performance, load, and reliability testing, because it's so resource intensive that it really is subject to a disproportionate number of project risks. Let's see. Gayatri says, thanks for the link. You're quite welcome. Let's see. And he asks then, how do the giant website owners like Google, Yahoo, Amazon, and others perform performance testing? What process or model do they follow and the infrastructure used? Well, obviously, if you're Google, if you're Yahoo, if you're Amazon, you are not going to test the quote-unquote production environment, because the production environment is immense, right? So you have to try to achieve realism in some other way. For example, by segregating your environment to different servers that do different things, and then very carefully measuring the kinds of load levels that come in the real world into those servers. And basically by producing a system that is where things are separated from other things, then we can test those things in isolation to a certain extent, provided that we're careful about watching for systemic choke points. So if you think back to the example I showed of the bank, where we were simulating a wide area network and a local area network, so we're actually going to have faster throughput. And the question we had to ask was, well, is that undermining the meaningfulness of our tests? So you'd have to look for those same kind of things of, are we testing in a way where data is actually flowing around faster than it would in the real world, or more directly than it would in the real world, or something. So the careful analysis is required in these situations, and it's going to be more risky. It is going to be more risky than in a situation where you've got a standard web server, application server, database server, and you can replicate that environment in your test lab and bang away on it. And so that, if you can't replicate the production environment, there are risks of unrealistic results. Manjulu says, thanks, Rex, for the information. We'll try to implement them. Good luck with that, Manju. Gayatri says, thank you, so you're quite welcome. Let's see. Another email question. Explain the concept of tip-over test more completely, please. So tip-over test, the idea is to gradually ratchet up the load, as I said, beyond what's supported, and then see whether the system fails in a way which could be considered graceful. Now, what graceful degradation or graceful failure means is, yeah, the system's going to go down at some point, or the system's going to start shedding users or rejecting new users or something at some point. But how does it do that?